Hey guys, Derek Buko Chess. In today's episode, I'm just going to be doing some Rook Endgames. So take a second to look at this puzzle. So pause. And alright, so now that you pause and take a look at the puzzle. So the characteristics of this puzzle is you already got the Rook in the right place. So the Rook is behind what's going to be the pass pawn, right? So you're going to play b3. And then if A takes b3, you've got A takes b3 again, and now you're pushing that pawn all the way to a queen. Can he stop it? So king c3 doesn't work because you just push b2. Rook to b6 doesn't work because rook just takes rook. Rook to e7 check, king to h6. Possibly you can go for a mate there as white with g4, and then h takes g4, h takes g4, and now there's no longer a mate, so then you just push a pawn to b2, and if he checks you on g5 check, if he plays g5 check, you go to h5, and you can sneak out on the light squares that way, and you're still pushing your pawn. And say you do b3, a takes b3, a takes b3, rook to a6, b2, and the rook can't go to a1 because it'll just be taken by the pawn. So yeah. So the move is b3. And here. So he's going to do it this way, which makes sense. So in this case, what do you want to do? In this case, I think, and I should have analyzed this, but I did not. I think you might be able to play b3 there. Then you play b3, king takes the rook, and then you push the pawn. And can he catch it? He cannot. So, but then what happens? So then he gets a pawn to d7 though, and you check with a queen, check. Yeah, I don't know. That's it's a little sketchy. It's a little sketchy for sure, because he's going to play king to c5. You'll attack the pawn. He'll play king to c6. So here, I guess I would just take. I would just take the rook and bring the king in. So yeah. Whoop. And there you go. So let's take a look here. Looks like king takes b3, and now king to. It says rook to c8. Oh, stop blocking the king, which is that's fine too. That's probably better technique. So you'd have to analyze it, but let's look at rook c8. Now let's look at d6, king to g7, and let's look at pawn to pawn to d7, then just rook to d8, and then after he plays there, well, let's see here. Let's take a look. Very curious. So here, rook to d8. Then I would say something like g4. Then king f7, and then g takes h5, g takes h5, and then here. So I think this is getting a little bit on the tricky side. But I guess, yeah, this is just a bit on the tricky side. So king to e7, and then king to, well, wouldn't you just protect here, I think? So there's that. And now h4, I don't know if you play h4. I think just rook to f8 works here. Yeah, so rook to f8. And that should be all she wrote. So he's got a king c4. You take this pawn. You block the king from coming down any further to protect this pawn, you see. And yeah, so this is winning. This is 100% winning. And you just play rook f8 now. And I don't know. It doesn't really matter. King e4 maybe. And then you can go all the way back, and you should be good. And you should be able to win that pawn, no problem. You do have to be a little careful. Because there's a situation where you could end up taking the pawn on e6, and then he could queen with d8. So let's take a look at that. I wasn't expecting this one to be so complicated, but here in the ending, it's something. So king e4. King e4 is funky. So let's go king. I like king d5. I'd play king d5 before I play king e4. So king d5. H4. And then king to c6. And then rook to d1. And then king to c7. And rook to c1 check. King to b7. And then rook to c3. And what you're going to do, right? So let's look at king to b6. So this is the technique right here. You can just take that pawn, can't you? And then if he goes to king to c7 again, you can then check him again, and then just push your pawn, and you'll have a checkmate. Easy enough. Easy enough. So, okay, let's go to the next one. That was a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Ooh, what's going on here? All right, so pause the video and take a look, and then come back for the answer. All right, so this one is relatively easy. So white made a mistake and has allowed you to trade. Now, is the trade good for you? So let's try to visualize it. A rook to e8 check. King to either d4 or d3. I don't think it matters much. And then rook takes the rook, and then king takes e3. And then your king will take g3. And if he plays king to e2, what do? So after king to e2, you're going to play king to g2. And you're just going to push your pawn after that. So say he goes king e3, you push your pawn to h4. And then if he plays, I don't know, something like king to f4, you just keep pushing your pawn until you queen it. Yeah, I mean, that's the best continuation for him. So let's take a look at it here. So it's rook to e8 check. And rook takes rook. And king takes that. And then here, then the king goes up here. So what you're doing is when you bring your king to this square, you're basically shouldering off this king so he can't get over here. So if you don't know this, if white could get his king over here to here, and this pawn can't get through, the best you can get is a stalemate. So it's a draw. So whenever there's an h-pawn, if your opponent has an h-pawn, all you got to do is you got to get your king into the corner where that h-pawn would queen, or the a-pawn, okay? Just those corner pawns. So anyways, and that's all you got to do. And so in here, the technique would be to play king to g2, and it blocks the other king from going anywhere, okay? I'm going to go back a couple moves and show you what I mean. So just to make sure that everybody knows. So he plays this. Say I made a mistake, right? I did that. Now, I just want to show you this, so this way that if you've never seen this, you'll see this before it happens in a game to you. Okay? So if you do this, I think he'll do this, and at this point you're stuck, right? There's no way out. You're either going to let him into that corner, or he's going to keep you on the edge here. So for example, let's try this move. And he goes here. And then best you can do is this move. The other one's just a repetition. Then he just slides over. And then you do something like that. And he does this. And here is just stalemate. And then here, he can take this pawn and stalemate. So, again, the technique is to shoulder the king out of these squares so there's no check, so there's no stalemate. All right, let's go on to the next one. If at any point that you're watching this video, it's like 2 years from now or whenever, if you see that and you're like, what's he talking about? Leave a comment. If I see it, I will make another video really explaining those techniques. Because they're kind of second nature to me now at this point, playing, to be honest with you. So, unless you're used to explaining these things, it is a little kind of weird because you're like, oh, it's almost like I'm just using hand moves, I'm just kind of making those moves without even really thinking about it. So let's go to the next one here. And so pause the video, think about it for a few minutes, and then come back. All right, so this is going to be another puzzle, I think, that's going to take longer to explain what happens after you queen the pawn. So I mean, the technique to queen is easy enough. It's going to be blocking this rook's path, right? So the rook is, attacking up this file. So you're going to want to block it with this rook, okay? So once you block it, though, that rook doesn't have to take. I mean, he probably should. So rook takes, king takes the pawn, and then you're going to queen on a1. So the question is, can black queen his other pawns? And it gets pretty sketchy, to be honest with you. Definitely looks like he might be able to. So, I mean, black is probably winning this, but it would take some technique. I mean, more technique than I have, to be honest with you. But let's take a look at the actual puzzle, which is this. Right, and the king's going to take the rook here. Okay, so success, it says, and we're going to just look at it here. So it says king takes h6, right? Okay, so king takes h6 is the computer move. And now a1 queen. So we've gotten that far in our calculations already. So what happens on g5? Because that's kind of what I was thinking. That might be a little tricky, right? g5. So queen to h1, king to g6. And then you've got... So the king has to come over, right? So it's king to b4, king to b3. Probably doesn't matter. So we'll go king b4. f3. What happens on h6? So on h6, king to c5. So, okay. So what they're saying is... Yeah. Okay. So let's see here. So f3... So let's look at h6, and let's go to, I like king to c4 best, just get your king in there. And then king to f7, I think makes sense. And then he's going to queen h7 check or king d5. I think king d6 here is pretty good. So your king is in a pretty good spot now. Let's see what happens if he plays f4 or h7. H7 doesn't look right. Let's see here. Let's 3. Yeah, so I guess f3. And then queen to h7 check, which makes sense because you're gonna want to split the king up. Let's try king f8, and let's go. I guess just here probably. And then. Yeah, so then so what you're doing is now you're threatening mate there. If he moves to there, to king 8, you're going to threaten mate on e7. So anyway, yeah, so I guess that's the technique. You just want to stop the pawns and the king long enough so that your other king can come all the way down to help stop the advancement of the pawns. You're gonna have to watch out for stalemate threats here. You know, like I don't think there are any. If you can, just take stuff with check. You know, I mean, and that's pretty much all that you have to do. Just make sure you're constantly taking stuff with check and using tempo. So, for example, say if I do that, you take with the queen, and you get a check. He goes here. You take this with a you take this with a check, and then let's say, say if he comes here. Here, all you got to do is you just got to move your king here. And then he's got one move now there. And you could take the pawn, or you could mate here. Or, take the pawn, checkmate. So that's how that would work. Let's go on to the next puzzle. And, okay. So, pause the video and take a look at the puzzle. Try to solve it on your own. And I'll come back and explain it to you. All right, so this is one of those times you got to ask yourself if the trade is good or bad for you. I would say, without even really calculating, you should be able to tell that the trade is pretty decent for you. So try to visualize basically your king on the white king on d3, and then it's your move, right? So if you trade the rooks, the king will end up on d3. And you go to king g4, and now you're stopping the pawn on, primarily the pawn on f2 from advancing one square anyways. So then say he goes king to either e2 or e3. I think e2 looks better to me. I'm not 100% sure. But then you would play king to h3. And then you are attacking the pawn. So then, like, say he plays, I don't know, f3. You take the pawn on h2. So now you've got a king on h2. And you're attacking the pawn on g3. And again, you're perfectly placed to push the pawn. So say if he played... say if he plays king to f2, okay, so I'm just going to run back that position for you. So rook takes rook, king to g4, king to e2, king to h3, pawn to f3, king takes h2, king to f2, and now you want to, let's see what happens if you play king to h3. Okay, so after king to h3, he's got to either stay with his pawn on g3, or he's got to push his pawn on g3. So he can't stay with it, so he's got to push it. Well, no, he could push his f-pawn. So let's say he pushes f4 at that point, okay? So he pushes f4, and then you can play king to h2. So you're still touching his pawn. So he's got to play king to f3 at that point. And then you're going to play king to g1, right? And then if he pushes, you just take with your h-pawn. So he's going to play king to e3, and then you play king to g2, and you're going to take his pawn, then you're going to push your h-pawn. All right. So let's actually look at that so it's a little bit easier. So rook takes rook, king to g4. Okay, so he picked e3. I think everything still works about the same. Unless, okay, let's take a look at king h3 and then king to f4. So then you take, he goes to g5, you go to g3, 2 rather, he takes your g6 pawn. Okay, so in this case, so with king e3, I would say you're going to have to play h4 here. So you play h4. He could check you, I suppose, if that's what he wanted to do. Or, actually, you could just play g... Yeah, you can just play g5 here too. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So g5, f3, king to h3. You're attacking the pawn now. f4. Then you just play g4. And then king to e2. King takes h2, king to f2, king to h3, right? And then he's got to give up the pawn there. Then you're going to push your h pawn. So he'll play king to f1, so you take, he slides over. Yeah, so that's winning too. So here, I think g5 is winning. So g5, let's look at king to, geez, where's the king go? Okay, so f5, let's look at, okay, so g5, h4. So, yeah, so in a tournament game, you'd have to look at all this. So, I mean, this is supposed to be like easy puzzles, so I wanted the easier ones to kind of show you. But, I mean, it's good that we get these two. So, you're going to play g5, h4. Then the question is, can you take? I mean, I think you have to take. It doesn't matter if you can or not. So, then you just g takes h4, g takes h4, king takes h4, king to f4. Yeah, that looks like a draw, actually. So, So I'd say actually g5 might be a draw. So it looks like you might have to play king to h3 in this position too. But king to h3, king to e, king to f4, then you take the pawn, then he goes there, then you go there, then he takes, then you take, then he takes, then you take, and yeah, he goes there. Oh yeah, no, then you can push the pawn, right? Yeah, okay. All right. I just miscalculated that in the beginning. So you're going to go here. Yeah, we're going to play this out. Let's go. I think this is the most testing line. So you take, king goes here, king goes to g2. King takes this pawn, king takes this pawn, and whichever one king wants to take. And then king takes g3, and he can't stop this pawn. So the king's just going to go off somewhere, and you're going to be able to queen the pawn. So there you go. Sorry that that took so long, guys. Anyway, so this has been Derek Bucala Chess. I'm going to do more of these rook puzzles, so that way we can get kind of an understanding of pawn games and rook endgames. I think these are really good. I will eventually start doing other endgame stuff, and these puzzles are more geared towards your beginner intermediates. Because, I mean, as you saw, I mean, I was prone to make mistakes from time to time, too. And I think it's just like really good things, especially for beginners, even if they're a little too hard for you, or say you're seeing the puzzle, because some of these puzzles are easy enough. It's the follow through, it's the technique needed to actually win the game after that I think is not coming through with these puzzles, which might be something that you would get from a puzzle book as opposed to like these online trainers. Anyways, Derek Blue Collar Chess. I hope you enjoyed this. Talk to you guys later.